The Pittsburgh Steelers had a big win, snapping a losing streak to get a W over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 20-18. But the quarterback play was certainly interesting. Kenny Pickett led a touchdown drive to start the game, but didn't score another touchdown afterwards. It was Mitch Trubisky who came in when he was hurt and led the Steelers to a touchdown drive and closed out the game for them. We'll talk about that situation. Is there a controversy? Also, Ray Fittipaldo is going to give you his grades across the board on the team, and we'll talk about being one place back of the AFC North, where the Steelers' chances are. We'll talk about all of that here on the North Shore Drive podcast for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm Chris Carter. Hey, he's Ray Fittipaldo. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. And welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's Ray Fittipaldo, and we are of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, bringing you this show Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But you can always find content on this YouTube channel or this podcast station on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere podcasts are hosted. But also, again, on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette to get all of our daily content that we have coming out here all the time. Today's episode is brought to you by the Acrisure Fan Advantage, with the power to project one of our Post-Gazette Steelers beat writers into your home or office. By using augmented reality, you can get an exclusive pregame breakdown from a Steelers expert standing right in your living room. Get the latest insights on starting lineups, key matchups, and critical stats at post-gazette.com/Acrisure Fan Advantage. No apps or downloads, just insider access to Steelers updates at post-gazette.com/Acrisure Fan Advantage, and get a real edge on this week's action. Ray, the Steelers had an edge in this game. They came out and they played a really solid game of defense against Tom Brady, but everyone was talking about the quarterback play for how Mitch Trubisky came in. And Ray, we can go back and forth about specifics in this game, but I really felt like there were times that Kenny Pickett did the right things and he was just surviving in the moment. But it really seemed like Mitch Trubisky looked unshackled. Like he was just like, you know what? Whatever issues I had with worrying about losing my job, I got to go win. I got to go prove that I can do this. And you saw a more confident version of him out there that helped him make some of those plays at the end.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, I don't know what it says about the quarterbacks or the offensive coordinator or the way the game plans are constructed. But if you look at the two instances where both of those guys came in relief, Kenny played great pretty much during the Jets game when he came in. And in the two starts against the Bills and yesterday, he was so-so. Okay?
Yeah.
And it's the same with Trubisky. He looked tremendous in relief of Pickett.
He did
yesterday. And in his four starts, he was kind of blah. So I don't know what to draw from that, but it just seems like when these guys come in and they got nothing to lose, Mitch referenced it yesterday. Hey, I wasn't so much thinking out there. I was just playing. Whatever those guys did in those situations, they got to put that into the game plan, and they got to play like that going forward. I'm going to guess here on Monday, Chris, that, with concussions, that Mitch is probably going to get one more start. We'll see how it goes, but I think the NFL and its teams are being very careful right now with concussions. So this is a conversation that will be ongoing. But, I don't know how you feel about it, but it just seems like just the way the game plans are constructed, the starting quarterbacks have problems being consistent and sustaining momentum throughout a game, and they got to find answers for that no matter who starts.
Right. And I think you're right. It's about sustaining. It's about getting because we saw even last week, Kenny Pickett against the Bills, their only 3 points came on that opening drive, when they looked efficient. And for a second there, you're like, is there something here? And then they get smoked for the rest of the game. Granted, I don't think that Kenny Pickett was the biggest issue that led to them not getting points the rest of the game. But still, you saw a similar thing this game. They got their first touchdown on an opening drive since I don't even know how long, right? And there's a sense that's like, is the offense figuring it out? Is Kenny Pickett putting together? And there were times where, again, I don't think he was the biggest problem, but there were also times that he missed opportunities, when he was out there. And you said it wasn't consistent. And he went 11 of 18 for 67 yards. And you saw a lot of the same short passing issues that that Mitch Trubisky was showing, where he was sticking to the short game and not taking the shots downfield. Granted, his last play of the game, he did take a shot downfield, and then that was when he got knocked out and Kevin Dotson's holding call wiped it away. But Mitch Trubisky comes in after that, goes 9 of 12 for 144 yards and throws the first touchdown to a wide receiver the Steelers have had all season long. I'm with you, Ray. If Kenny Pickett, with that concussion issue after Tua Tagovailoa, and I think the Steelers are an exception. I think the Steelers do, they're not the Miami Dolphins. They don't just send guys back out there after being like, how many fingers am I holding up? 5? Okay, go back out there. You're fine. But if you're the Steelers, you're going to have that reputation. You're going to carry yourself that way. I think Kenny Pickett should be protected. If he's actually concussed, if that's really what happened there, and that's why they kept him out of the game, you're going to have a week. And again, Mitch Trubisky, it's not like Mitch Trubisky can't go. You saw it in this game, 9 of 12, 144 yards, a passer rating of 142.4. And you can have Mason Rudolph. This is why you kept Mason Rudolph this whole time, was that if one of these guys went down, you had another option. I don't see the reason to rush Kenny Pickett back out of there, because it's not like Kenny Pickett's Ben Roethlisberger, where he just has a ticket that he's just the starter all the time. That I think was the coolest thing about this quarterback situation, was going into this year, nobody was promised anything. Like, hey, you have a starting job at a certain point if you earn it, but you can lose it if you're not playing well enough, and it's not personal.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely different situation. And I've covered the team now for more than a decade, Chris. When Ben would be banged up, he'd miss Wednesday, he'd miss Thursday. As long as he went out there on Friday, he was good to go, because he knew the offense so well. He was a veteran. He had that in him. Steelers are going to go out there Wednesday. I cannot see Kenny Pickett going out there after being concussed for 3 days later, that he's going to take those reps. Probably not even Thursday. So it just becomes a situation where you got to prepare to play a football game, and you got to put your best foot forward with the guy who's going to get the most practice reps. And right now, that's probably going to be Mitch Trubisky. So I really like what I saw out of Mitch yesterday. He wasn't afraid to let things develop. It was interesting. I thought the pass protection improved in the fourth quarter. I didn't think it was great in the third quarters. And I'm wondering, with a rookie quarterback in there, was Kenny getting them into the right protections all the time? I mean, there was that one where it was a jailbreak and he got tackled on his own 2-yard line. Mm-hmm. Mitch kind of seemed to have that under control. 3rd and 11 conversion, 3rd and 13 conversion.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think there was a 3rd and 15 conversion. They got the 17-yard catch. I think that was to Pickens.
Yeah, it was.
So you need pass protection to hold up for 3, 4, 5 seconds in those instances, and it certainly did. So that's not something a lot of people think about. What does a quarterback have to do with protections? Well, he's got a lot to do with protection. He calls it out. He's in communication with that offensive line. So we'll see if we could get some answers and see exactly why that took place, later on this week.
And certainly, I think part of it is, and I think this goes back to your original point about, what's the difference? It might just be fresh eyes, because people don't realize, on top of the protections, the audibles, knowing what the defense is doing, knowing what your offense is doing, knowing what hot routes you could call and what everyone's going to. That's why the quarterback is such a difficult position to play, is that there's so many components that you have to be aware of at all times. And like, when we make criticisms, when we say, hey, they didn't do this right, it's not like, oh, you suck, you don't deserve the chance to be quarterback. This is a hard job. It's just a reality. It's like, hey, you know what? There was this opportunity. This guy didn't get it done. That was why this play didn't work. But that's why you have to be so prepared to be a good quarterback. And oftentimes what happens is the attrition of you're making decision after decision after decision. And this is, I think, what the Steelers were trying to protect Kenny Pickett from, was having that stack up. And after you've made a million decisions in 2 games, because it's not just where you throw the ball. It's not just how you throw the ball. It's when you throw the ball. It's what plays being called. It's how do you drop back. It's what protection you call. It's the chemistry that you have with your running back, with your receiver, with your tight end. All those things play into it. And after a while, if you're just getting used to the NFL, that takes time to grill into you. And so then you're going to start making mistakes, because everything's going to be starting to come fast at you. And that's where this becomes a real challenge. And that's why the whole time I'm like, I think they're protecting Kenny because they want to let him kind of get used to how the speed of this game works. Because, you saw in the Jets game, like you said, comes out gunning because he's feeling he's hitting the ground running. But then when, mistakes start to compile and factors start to compile, there's things that start to get glossed over and there's details that get missed. And then you have protection issues. Mitch Trubisky might have been going through a similar thing because it's not just like rookies go through it. Everybody goes through it. And you saw in this game, fresh eyes, no fear. Let me go out and prove this. And he made it happen in the fourth quarter.
And I think some of the same mistakes are popping up each and every week. And I think sometimes veterans are just better equipped to handle those things because they have past references and they have their own histories.
Yep.
How they deal with things. So Kenny Pickett comes in, things are rolling. Boom, you get a 10-yard holding penalty on Kevin Dotson. Okay, now it's 1st and 20. Okay,
yep.
How do I handle this situation? Mitch Trubisky, you could say all you want about what he went through in Chicago, but there's a Rolodex there of how you dig out from those situations, right? And he has that. And Kenny Pickett as a rookie just doesn't have that yet. So I think – the offensive line penalties have been an issue all season. And we saw late in that game yesterday, finally, Mitch was able to handle those things. And Mitch was able to make some plays for this football team. And he had help from his receivers. Chase Claypool was awesome yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give him some props because I think we've both been very critical of him and his play, through the first, 5-6 weeks of the season. His skill players helped him out, but I thought Mitch really stepped up, took a lot on his shoulders yesterday, and not only made the right decisions, but he had the athleticism and he had the arm to go out and, pull out that victory.
He certainly did. We'll talk about all the positions in a minute with Ray's grades from Sunday. I want him to break down his thoughts on each of the positions, and I'll give some of my feedback as well right here on the North Shore Drive podcast. But first, we have to talk to you guys about Liquid Death, one of our great sponsors. If you're out tailgating, you may notice someone crushing a tall boy cans, and you're thinking, man, how is that person drinking so many beers and staying so hydrated and not getting drunk? Well, it's probably not that they're drinking tall boy cans. It's probably that they're drinking Liquid Death, which is this new Mountain Spring water brand that comes in a can, looks like a beer, but is just refreshing, easy water that you can get, and it doesn't have the taste of plastic in it. It's straight out of a can. It's great for the environment. It's great for you. Why do they call it Liquid Death? Well, because they're trying to kill plastic pollution. They're trying to murder your thirst at the same time. 10% of every can sold from the profits of every can sold go to kill plastic pollution and donate to fighting plastic pollution on the planet. But also, it's just fresh, easy water for you to gulp down, stay hydrated, be refreshed all day long. And let me just give y'all a sample. When you crack it open, it's just like a beer. It sounds like it. You hear that on the microphone there. I sip it, and it's like fresh water out of a mountain spring. That's how awesome it is to have Liquid Death. And you're going to think like, wow, that's a crazy brand name. But it really does murder your thirst. I drink this and I'm rehydrated and I'm ready to go. Drinking Liquid Death is not only refreshing, but it comes without that plastic taste that eliminates any worry of residue that might be in the water. And when I'm done, I can throw it in the recycling bin and knowing that it actually is going to get recycled. Go to Liquid Death go get some Liquid Death right now at Target, 7-Eleven, or your county fair, or find a local Liquid Death retailer near you with their store located at liquiddeath.com/shore. That's liquiddeath.com/shore. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Ray Fittipaldo, and it's time to go over Ray's grades for Sunday. Ray, you gave the quarterbacks an A+, and I was like, what? That was like, what? If you had told me that the quarterbacks ever got an A+ this season, I'd have called you a liar. I said that wasn't going to happen. But what went behind this? Was this a combined thing of Kenny and Mitch, or was this primarily Mitch coming in and saving the day?
Yeah, primarily Mitch, but I want to give Kenny some credit for leading that first touchdown drive. There wasn't a lot great in between. There was that first series. There was the Mitch touchdown drive, and then there was the Mitch killing the clock drive at the end. 3 excellent drives. There was a whole lot of really mediocrity in between. But I got to give Mitch credit. Mitch came in. We just referenced it in the last segment. All those third down conversions, it was on point for those. And he stepped up in the big moment. I just think under the circumstances, what that defense was going through, the way they They were kind of wearing down at the end. You saw Tampa finally get in the end zone there.
Mm-hmm.
Mitch had to go out and win that game.
Yep.
He did it. So he and the quarterbacks, Kenny included, they get an A+ for that performance.
They come into the game. They need a touchdown to get some distance. And they get the ball at their own 26. He comes out. He hits Pickens for 14. Third and 6. He completes a pass to Connor Hayward that gets them down the field. And then he throws a touchdown to Chase Claypool on that drive. And then when they get the ball back, they're only up 2 thanks to a Devin Bush breakup. And I want to get to him in the linebacker segment. But You're absolutely right. You know, after the aborted fumble, like when the bad snap happens and Mason Cole snaps it and Mitch Trubisky has to go fall on it, and it's now 3rd and 15 after it was 2nd and 2. I was like, well, that's that. Tom Brady's about to win this game by 1 point because they're about to have to put the ball. He's going to drive down, get a field goal, and this is going to be over. And Mitch Trubisky says, nah, it's 3rd and 15. I complete 17 yards to George Pickens. And that was, I thought, one of his most authoritative strikes that I've seen him make as a quarterback, where it's like, I'm going to stand up in the big moment. He does that. And then on 3rd and 11, completes it to Claypool running out of bounds. And then he has a run on a 1st and 10 that gets him 9 yards and then sneaks it up the middle to get 3 yards. And then that was the game. That's clutch performances right there. And that's what you went and got a veteran for in free agency to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you wonder, where was that in the first 4 games of the season, right? I mean, it just, I think Mitch realized that, the questioning in the news conference afterwards basically was like, Mitch, what's changed? Why did you look this way? Why do you have 144 quarterback rating in 2 quarters of work today when you didn't nearly play as well in your 4 starts? So he talked about just being relaxed more and maybe just having more of a gunslinger mentality. But hey, like I said, Chris, whatever he did, do it again in Fort Lauderdale on Sunday night. And hey, maybe we'll be talking again next Monday about a victory if he does that as well.
Let's get off the quarterbacks. We talked a lot about them. Najee Harris, you gave the running backs a B-, 42 yards and 14 carries. A lot of that came on the last 2 drives when they were trying to move the ball. And he also caught Kenny Pickett's first touchdown pass in the NFL. What did you think of him and his performance?
The only reason they got a B- was for those final 2 drives. You referenced the one drive. Harris ripped off an 8-yard gain on 1st down.
Mm-hmm.
That could have been big. I mean, it was negated because of the bad snap, but that's what you need in those, those 4-minute offense type situations. I thought that was a positive. And then he also had some other runs in there on that final drive where he kind of helped run out the clock too. So that was trending towards a C- or a D before those final 2 drives. But I'll give Najee credit for being the hammer there late that they needed him to be.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel like part of it's also the offensive line isn't giving him much help. I mean, you saw Kevin Dotson getting whooped, but I mean, it was the same thing last week where he was dodging Ed Oliver and then a linebacker, and then he had to dodge a safety at the line of scrimmage this week. And I get it. The Buccaneers defensive front is nasty. Vita Vea I think is a very young, talented defensive lineman. You got Shaq Barrett, you got Devin White, you got Levante David. They're bringing people from all over, and I get it. They're talented, but Najee Harris having to dodge people or not having holes to run through has been a consistent problem. I think the cool thing is for Najee is that he's been able to kind of, keep it going, not kind of look disheveled. He's at least trying out there and taking what yards are available. But the receivers, you gave a B+ to. And I think a lot of that was on the back of Chase Claypool catching all 7 of his targets in this game and getting that touchdown. Was this something that you saw coming from him eventually this season, or was this a surprise?
Surprise to me. I mean, he just, I noted in my story today, he hadn't had more than 5 receptions in any of the first 5 games or more than 50 receiving yards. He was not a factor in the passing game. So I don't know if it was a connection with Mitch, for that they just sort of the light went on for them because they had work in the preseason, but whatever it was, he really came through. He's been much maligned going back to last season. He really hasn't fulfilled the promise that a lot of people had for him after that hot early start. I think his first 8 games as a rookie were unbelievable when you look at it, and he's just kind of tailed off since then. So really big game from Chase. George had the big 3rd down conversion.
Yep.
Not a lot from Deontay yesterday, but Connor Hayward, let's give him some credit too.
Right.
Pat Freiermuth is out. Connor Hayward comes in, has that big 45-yard reception to set up that score. So, the moment wasn't too big for the rookies in this game. George Pickens had a huge conversion. Connor Hayward had a big conversion too. So it's nice to see those rookies coming along in big spots the way they did yesterday.
I agree entirely. It's them stepping up in big moments, and that's what this team needs. They've drafted playmakers. They need those playmakers to come through in those situations to pick up the team where the offensive line can't. Let's talk about that offensive line. You gave them a C. I feel like that's totally fair because I don't feel like everyone had a terrible day. I feel like Kevin Dotson, this might have been his worst game as a Steeler. 2 holding calls, a false start, the holding call that he got wiped out of Deontay Johnson, big game, and on the same play he was the person that got Kenny Pickett drilled and knocked him out of the game. I felt like he looked as bad as we've seen him, but the rest of the offensive line, they didn't look great, but they held up in the right times late to give Mitch Trubisky time to throw the ball.
Yeah, and I don't think Dotson's played bad all season. He had a bad game yesterday.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of solutions. I mean, if Kevin Dotson continues on that trajectory, they're not going to turn to Kendrick Green.
Right.
They're not going to turn to Jesse Davis. So Kevin Dotson, he's got to play better. And I think you're right. I think those other guys, I think Chooks let up a sack early, but, for the most part, that pass pro improved as the game went on. And they certainly gave Mitch enough time at the end. So, yeah, I mostly dinged Dotson for that grade to C. I think otherwise, those guys pretty much had a B performance.
Flipping sides to the defensive line, you gave them a B+. I like that grade because, they weren't elite, but the Steelers only blitzed one time all game, and they were getting after Tom Brady. They were moving him off his launch spot. Larry Ogunjobi talked about that after the game. Cam Hayward, and then Cam Hayward said, look, we're not where we want to be yet. This isn't, we're not happy. We're glad we got the win, but they're trying to move forward. But still, that defensive line, they also stuffed Leonard Fournette. I thought that was going to be a big factor in this game, but they made him a mitigating, like a non-factor even in this game. I thought that this was a good sign that if this team isn't on the field for 100 snaps in a game, they can play the aggressive style that they want to play.
Yeah, 2.9 yards per carry for Bucks running backs. But more importantly, getting pressure up the middle on Brady. I don't know if you noticed, but I counted 3 or 4 times where he threw at the feet of his receivers. And that happened because he wasn't able to set his feet and step into his throws the way he likes to. So that was huge. Hayward, Ogunjobi, great games yesterday. We just haven't seen enough of that all season. Steelers need those types of performances from that duo going forward.
I also think Chris Wormley and Isaiah Loudermilk deserve shout-outs because Loudermilk had to fill in with DeMarvin Leal going on injured reserve. Loudermilk forced a hold. It almost got a TFL and got a holding call, and you don't see too many of those called when the Steelers defense is out there. And Chris Wormley, I thought, was actually a plus on the field. So, kudos to the defensive line as a whole. The linebackers, though, you gave him a B. I might have gave him a B+, man. Miles Jack had a big breakup. Robert Spillane had a big breakup. And Devin Bush had big breakups. And they were good in run defense. I felt like this might have been the linebacker group's best game of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Devin Bush's pass breakup and the 2-point conversion was huge because you don't know how that just changes everything going forward there. There would have been a different approach for the Steelers once they got the ball back. It just would have been a completely different situation. So that was huge. When I do the linebackers, Chris, I have to include the outside linebackers too.
You're right.
So Alex Highsmith did have a sack. That was his only stat all game.
Yep.
Only stat all game, 1 sack. Malik Reed, I thought he was a little bit better. He had a few more tackles, still without a sack. So when you combine the inside guys and the outside guys, that's how I kind of came to that.
That makes sense.
I thought the inside guys, they played really well yesterday.
I just have in my mind, and this is my problem for reading so much like analytical stuff. Everyone says outside linebackers are just edge rushers now, so they don't include them. That's my fault for reading too much of their stuff. But they are absolutely linebackers, and you are right; they are absolutely included in that grade. This grade I do agree with. The secondary getting an A. Ray, I thought they was going to get torched, man. I was like, there's no way that this group is not going to let up like 400 yards to Tom Brady. You got Josh Jackson in the quarterback. And there were a couple plays early where you saw Tom Brady was like, we're 3rd down. I'm going to just go to Mike Evans against that guy that just got here last week. But they kept it in check. They were bracketing the receivers. They were taking away his first reads. This was an inspired performance from James Pierre, Josh Jackson, Quincy Wilson, Trey Norwood, all these guys that Trey Norwood's been here and, James Pierre's been here. But by and large, these were guys that were thrown into a situation against the guy that everyone says is the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yeah, two separate stories here. I mean, huge for Quincy Wilson.
Yeah.
You didn't mention Elijah Riley.
Yes,
too. Josh Jackson. They weren't even in training camp, Chris. They were not in Latrobe. I don't think any of those guys got here until after the season started. So great job by the coaching staff to get those guys coached up and then to get them in a position to play. That was huge. How about a big shout out for James Pierre? I mean,
absolutely.
He was this number 3 cornerback last year. Had a good camp last year, just lost his job, didn't make enough plays, got beat. And he's really been on the back burner ever since. I mean, this was his real first opportunity to get a lot of snaps on defense, and I thought he played really well. So that just goes to show you could be in the tank for a long time. As long as you have a positive attitude, you can get back at it. So I got to give James Pierre a ton of credit for the way he played yesterday.
Absolutely. I thought that he played very well. I noticed on the stat sheet that he didn't get credit for a breakup in that officially by the NFL, but there was definitely a play. I saw him get a hand on a football, and either way, they went at him a few times, and he was standing tall. Yeah. There were a couple times he got beat, but there were also plenty of times he didn't. Also, shout out to Arthur Marlette. We shouldn't let up. He had some stuffs in the run game. I thought that and you saw his energy come into the field. He's not a critical player for this team. Like, he's not the guy that's going to make or break the defense. But you noted in your article after the loss to the Bills and how he was vocal and he was like, guys, we can't be doing this. We can't be laughing about this. And I'm telling you, I was standing there when they were coming off the field. He was like, yes, sir. He was bringing energy. That's what you need from guys like that who are their effort guys. Arthur Marlette's not making any Pro Bowls. He's not going to, shine any stat sheets. But when he's coming in and he's bringing that fire, that passion, you need role players like that can set a good tone.
Yeah, just to reiterate how improbable that was, Tom Brady, postseason included, had like 99,000 passing yards going into that game, countless touchdown passes, 6 Super Bowls. And for Quincy Wilson and company, Josh Jackson, to do that against them, and just one of the more improbable things I think you'll see all season, not only in the Steelers game, Chris, but across the NFL.
It took the Steelers getting Joe Hayden and Minka Fitzpatrick and all that group to beat Tom Brady at Heinz Field. And then what we will most likely be the last time he ever comes to Pittsburgh, he loses to that group. That is crazy when you think about all the secondaries you've covered that have faced Tom Brady, that and been decimated by him. That this is a group that gets a W. Also, I think it's interesting to note he has now lost twice in a row in Pittsburgh when facing the Steelers, and he's technically winless at Acrisure Stadium. It's dumb, but it's kind of funny when you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't think he's going to come back in 2030 when the Bucs come back to Acrisure next time? You don't think he'll be back in 53?
He's going to be 50 years old, handing the ball off, little screen passes. Like, are they going to allow him to just walk? Are they going to allow him to have a walker on the field? Because eventually he's going to need one. But geez. Ray, if he plays more than 2 more years in the NFL, I will be shocked.
Chris, he looked every bit of 45 yesterday.
Absolutely.
I gotta tell you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's get the last 2 grades in here before we move forward. Special teams, A-, good grade. Steven Sims had a good return. Boswell they needed every one of his kicks to get in there. I also liked how you brought up that his lead gave them his field goal set up a 13-9 lead. You didn't have to put that in there, but for the Pitt folks, you absolutely did about the 13-9 lead. But a 55-yard field goal, if he don't make his kicks, they lose this game. And he didn't last week in a game in a way that it wasn't consequential to a blowout, but they needed him to step up. I also wanted to get your thoughts on Presley Harvin because he had 2 boomers to start and then faded late.
He's too inconsistent, Chris.
Yeah.
I mean, some of his punts, 41 yards in the 30s, a couple of them are line drives. There's no consistency out of him. And he's not getting off those short punts, when he's, deep into his own end zone. There was that one where he had to toe the end line.
Yeah.
But the other ones, he had plenty of time and room to get off good kicks, and he didn't. So I just think some of the same old stuff we saw from him last year. Just not enough consistency, and I kind of thought we were beyond that at this point.
I thought we'd be too. As a person who covered him when he played Pitt in 2020. That dude, I saw him flip the field like 5 times. Like he would just boom punts to pin Pitt back from being in their own end zone to putting Pitt back on their own 30. And it's just crazy to me that he can't do that in the NFL. But but last thing here, you gave the coaching staff a C, and I know that this includes everybody because I'm sitting here like, well, wait a second, the secondary had nobody in it, and they took away Tom Brady. But I think this also encompasses one, the first half situation where at the end of the first half they give Tom Brady the ball back. 2, the offensive scheme. What'd you say? Twice.
They gave it back to him twice.
Yeah.
They didn't capitalize on the first one. They finally did on the second one. So.
And I didn't have as much of a problem with the first time, but the second time, if you're gonna go be aggressive and get the first down. But when they didn't get on the first play and they stopped the clock, and then they just ran 2 dives to make them use their timeouts, it's like, well, you got to stay committed to a plan. And I'm a person who I'm the last person to ever say Mike Tomlin should be fired. And I don't think that this is anywhere near a fireable offense, but it is a real criticism. It's like, hey, you know what? If you're going to go out and start the call, that call, then go out and go for it. But if you want it to be conservative, start by being conservative. And then you could have ran out the clock and you went into half with a 4-point lead.
Well, 2 things can be true, Chris. Mike Tomlin put together an awesome game plan.
He did.
That was the reason they won that game from a defensive standpoint. And he completely butchered the end of that first half. Both things can be true. And I think they are true. And that's the only reason I gave him a C. That end of the half situation, I thought was terrible.
Yeah.
A head coach with his type of experience, you're getting the ball to begin the second half, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to go in with a 4-point lead. You want to
and with a rookie quarterback
with a 1-point lead, and you hand them the momentum. I mean, that's just I couldn't get over that. And I read the comments in my report card. People said, "Oh, how can the coaches deserve an A?" No. If Tom Brady got the ball back and they won by 1 point,
everyone would be banging on
an F. They would have gotten an F.
Yeah.
Hands down. So I split the difference. They got a C. I could not ignore the end of the first half. I thought it was that bad.
I will say I would have given them a B because I feel like that mistake didn't come back to haunt them, but it is a note where I'm just like, y'all need to clean that up the next time y'all facing a really good quarterback and you got a rookie out there doing that. But I hear you because that was a big mistake. We got to talk one more time about this team moving forward. Stay right with us here on the North Shore Drive podcast because we're going to break down the AFC North and their path forward. But first, we got to talk to you guys about Yinzers in the Berg. Yinzers, listen up. With the Steelers campaign off and running, it's time to show your support for the black and gold. Also, the Penguins are back in. You can get all Pittsburgh sports apparel at Yinzers in the Berg. They have 2 legendary shops in the Strip District that you can go to at any point in time. And you can also check out their online store at yinzerspgh.com. That's yinzerspgh.com. They have Pittsburgh sports apparel, accessories, and much, much more. If you want Kenny Pickett stuff, Mitch Trubisky stuff, Najee Harris stuff, Evgeny Malkin stuff, Sidney Crosby stuff, they got all of that. Go to their shops in the Strip District or go to their website, yinzerspgh.com, to get the best Pittsburgh sports apparel, accessories, and everything Pittsburgh sports. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Ray Fittipaldo. We're the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And Ray, this was not a good weekend for the AFC North. And I guess it was half and half because half the teams won and half the teams lost. But the Ravens lose to the Giants, who are now 5-1. Never saw that coming. You had that. You had the Browns getting smoked by the New England Patriots and Bailey Zappi. I thought the Patriots would win. I didn't think that badly. The Bengals eked out a win in New Orleans. They won 30-26. And then, of course, the Steelers won. So the division goes 2-2. But into this weekend, or into this next week, you have the Ravens and the Bengals sitting at 3-3. The Browns and the Steelers at 2-4. Nobody has a winning record, and the last place teams are just one game behind the first place teams. Right. And as bad as the Steelers have been, Ray, they're not out of this division race yet.
No. It's the NFL, right? I mean, that's anything can happen on any given Sunday, and Tua is going to be back for that Sunday night game in Miami. We'll see how that goes. Quarterbacks coming off concussions after missing some time. That's not always an ideal situation for those offenses. So we'll see if the Steelers can put it together. I thought coaches and players yesterday were very guarded. They weren't saying we got this thing turned around. They know it's going to be a long road. They just got to keep stacking wins, and if they keep doing that, they're going to make things interesting. But at the very least, on Sunday, Chris, they started to dig themselves out of this hole. We'll see if that can continue.
See, and Ray, this is where they started to dig themselves out of this hole, and I felt like there was a real foundation here. This wasn't like a fluky win that it's like you can't learn much from it. It's like, well, if we block 3 field goals, we can win games. Like that's not what it was. This offense averaged 2 minutes and 59 seconds on their drives with Kenny and Mitch, both in at quarterback. There was some consistency there. They were 7 of 15 on third downs, and one of those third downs that they missed, they got on fourth down. They were able to move the ball. They had times they got plays there, and in doing so, they lost the time of possession battle, but only by 2 seconds. Whereas against other teams like the Bengals, like not the Bills as much last week, but the Bengals, the Jets, the Patriots, in those early games, the Browns especially, they were losing it by 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 7 minutes, and you're getting your defense tired. And I truly think, and I asked Larry Ogunjobi about this, Alex Highsmith about this, and they all said the same thing. Like, look, as much as we deserve credit for playing good defense, the offense deserves credit for making sure that we weren't out there all day long. And I think that if the offense can do this, they don't have to score 30 points. But if they can just move the ball, eat some clock, even like 6-minute field goal drives, like Kenny Pickett did have, I think it was his 3rd or 4th drive of the game, that helps the defense stay fresh and play the way we saw in this game.
Yeah. Moving the chains was huge yesterday. We noted it late in the game, but you're right, early in the game too. Even on some of those drives, they didn't score. They weren't 3 and outs. They weren't out there for like 45 seconds, other than those last 2 drives to end the first half. Those were the exceptions. And that's amazing when you think about it, 3 minutes per drive. Mm-hmm. And you have those 2 clunkers in there factored into that equation. It was actually much, much better.
They had 4 3 and outs on the day. One of them was set up because of a holding call by Kevin Dotson. And the field goal drive that they had could have gone longer if Kevin Dotson wasn't called for a hold there. So, all in all, I felt like this was and one of those drives also was the Steven Sims return that got them in the red zone. They needed to turn that into a touchdown that would have changed this game a lot differently too. So, but that drive was always going to be short. But that's what 4 drives where you got the ball and you gave it back on a 3 and out. You avoided the turnover issues this game. That's a good sign for you moving forward. I think there's something tangible there that the offense, the receivers, and with both quarterbacks, they moved the ball with Kenny, they moved the ball with Mitch. Those are 2 things that I think that, if they can keep that going forward, again, they don't need 30 points a game, but 20, 24 points a game. And that was the number 6 defense in the NFL. And they were missing, they were missing 1 slot corner and Sean Murphy-Bunting, but they still had Devin White. They still have Levante David, Antoine Winfield, Carlton Davis, Vita Vea, all those guys. They still were out there. Joe Tryon. These guys were out there fighting, and they were able to convert these things. And now you're going to get to go against a Dolphins team that they have the players on defense, but they've been giving up a lot of yards. Maybe we can, this offense can break open some more big plays now that they, have gotten past the gauntlet of the Bills' number 2 defense and the Buccaneers' number 6 defense.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. The Steelers finally have a little bit of momentum on their side. They got a reason to be confident, and they haven't felt that since beating the Bengals in week 1. So we'll see if they can build on it. They did not build on it after the Bengals game. Let's see if they can do it now.
We certainly will see. We'll keep you posted here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Ray Fittipaldo, Jerry Dulac, Brian Batko, all our guys will be at the Steelers facility all week long, getting you updates on what's happening there, and what will be the quarterback situation. I'll be back on Wednesday on this North Shore Drive podcast with Jason Mackey, breaking things down, how we're seeing things, and also not just Steelers, but Penguins, because they had a big weekend as well, also beating Tampa Bay. Pittsburgh swept Tampa Bay this weekend. How about that? Thanks again for checking out the North Shore Drive podcast. He's Ray Fittipaldo. I'm Chris Carter. Check out our stuff at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette at post-gazette.com. Find this show and all of our YouTube and podcast content on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or YouTube. If you like this video, if you enjoy this video, like the video, subscribe to this YouTube channel, get all of our daily content, and this show Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'll be back Wednesday with Jason Mackey, breaking more things down in your Pittsburgh sports media. We'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down below in the description.